So here is the modified code suggested by our generative AI. Once again, we will calculate the sum to n, and again we're expecting the answer to be 10, since we are looking at 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4. So we click on Visualize Execution, and this time we have no error message. So let's click through the code and see what happens. We define the function, and now we call it with the argument 4. Now our red arrow is on line 1. We click on Next, and we come to line 2. We check if we are in the base case. Here n is 4. This is not the base case, so we will skip to line 4. And it says the way you calculate the sum to 4 is firstly you calculate the sum to 3, and then you have to add the 4 to that answer. So when we click on Next, what is going to happen? Well, we just saw what happens when you call a helper function. We move to a different frame. The only difference is that the helper function is the same function as the one we have just called, but otherwise the picture looks very, very similar. So you should be able to imagine what it looks like before I click Next. So, do you have it in your head? Let's click Next and see. We are recursively calling the same function. And here n is 3. Remember, we had called it with n minus 1, so 4 minus 1 is 3. So now we're in this recursive function. Notice that both these functions have a parameter n, but they are initialized to different objects. This n was initialized to 4. Why? Because when we called the function, we gave it the argument 4. This n was initialized to 3. Why? Because this instance or this copy of the sum2 function was not called here, it was called here on line 4. So this copy of the sum2 function has n equal to 3. Now we're inside this second copy of the sum2 function. The red arrow is up here. So now let us proceed. We ask, is 3 equal to 0? No, it's not. So we jump to line 4. Remember, this is line 4 in this instance of the sum2 function. Remember, this dark color highlights for us which frame to pay attention to. Now, how do we calculate the sum to 3? Well, we first have to calculate the sum to 2. Let's click on Next. And now we're in another copy of the sum2 function. And here n is 2. Once again, this 2 is not the base case. So we skip past this and we return sum2 of 1. We click on Next. Another copy gets created. This n is again not the base case. So we click on Next, we skip past the base case, and we make finally a call sum2 with n equal to 0. When n is equal to 0, this is the base case. So this instance of sum2 is able to return an answer directly without making another recursive call. When I click on Next, in this case n is 0, and so here we will go into the if condition and we will immediately return a value. No more recursive calls for this instance. So this instance down here is ready to return an answer. It is ready to return the answer 0. So when I click on Next, this instance is ready to return the value 0. Now, what is going to happen to this value? We must remember, why did we call sum2 of 0? We call sum2 of 0 at line number 4 in the previous instance of sum2, where n was 1. that is where we said sum2 of 1 minus 1, that is where we call sum2 of 0. So this return value 0 is going to be captured right here on line 4. So pay attention when I click on next, pay attention to the red arrow and pay attention to this frame which is about to disappear. This frame is finishing when I click on next. This is now the previous frame where n was 1. And when n is 1, I have captured that previous return value 0, and to that I have added 1. So in this instance of the sum2 function, I am now ready to return the value 0 plus 1, which is 1. So now this instance returns 1. But who is this value going to be returned to? Well, we remember who called sum2 of 1. Sum2 of 1 was called by sum2 of 2. So once again, when I click on next, I will go back to the same line, but this time in this instance, the previous instance. This current instance is going to end when I click on next. The red arrow does not move, and now I'm in the previous instance where n was 2. And here I took the previous answer 1, I added the current value of n, which was 2, so this answer is 3, and this value is going to be returned. It's a little bit confusing to see these arrows pointing like this. This certainly seems confusing, and you can reduce this confusion in a very simple way, which I will show you shortly. But let's finish this calculation. So here we're ready to return the answer 3. Again, this answer is going to be returned to the previous instance on the same line. So when I click on next, this instance disappears. I'm in the previous instance. I have calculated the previous answer as 3. I add the current n, which is also 3, and so the answer is 6. This answer is returned to this previous instance of sum2. When I click on next, I take that 6 and I add n, which is 4, and I get the answer 10. Now, where is this value returned to? Well, we always look above us. There is no previous instance of sum2. The only previous instance is the global frame. And so we're going to return to the global frame. Where was this function called? Well, it was called in print. So this value 10 is going to be the object that we are now going to print. When I click on next, I get the answer 10.